2 layers of biaxial on the back of it. I wetted it out first with the epoxy to wet out all the plywood and the edges and everything. You see where I had to grind it down just a little bit to get it to fit into the old stuff. And then that area right there slides up inside of another hollow. So that'll get covered with thickened epoxy whenever I slide it in. And I'll let this cure, and then I'll give it a light sanding and cleaning acetone to get rid of the blush and or the denatured alcohol. And all of the holes, everything's drilled oversized, cut oversized. And once I put it in, then from the top side, I'll fill in the edges with thickened epoxy to give me a barrier from rainwater getting in. And of course, you notice my little heater down there going too. I'll leave that heater running tonight so that this can cure good. It'll be down in the 30s tonight, so I'm trying to keep inside the boat around 50 or better, which shouldn't be a little problem with those little ceramic heaters. It keeps the whole boat warm. That's what I did last night with back under there, and it cured out perfectly fine, no problem, no issues at all. And it was down in the low 30s last night too. It was up in the 50s in the afternoons though, so mid-afternoon is when I'm doing this after it's gotten warm. And I'll leave the heater on for an hour or two before I start, to warm up the epoxies and hardeners, get it all up to kind of decent temperature. And then I'll leave the heater running overnight. Okay, I've got that centerpiece, that third piece glued in, epoxied in. I'll come back around the edges with some thickened epoxy in a Ziploc bag or something, squeeze in that joint everywhere. I got squeeze out, but not enough to fill in the gap completely. In some places it squeezed all the way out, and I've actually smeared it out with my fingers, but a few places it didn't squeeze out enough to fill in the gap, but I can see squeeze out, so I know I've got good should have good bond. And I put plenty on it, so got it wedged up nice and hard, and then from the outside I could see from the holes, that it was pushed up against from the outside, that it was up tight and had squeeze out on the outside as well. So that should take care of it. I've got the heater running again. I'll leave the heater on overnight. Let that cure, and then I'll come in and with thickened epoxy, like I say, and fill in the perimeter of it good to make sure there's no gap there. And then I'll put 2 or 3 layers of tape, fiberglass tape, epoxy resin, and bond it to the old glass. That real dark looking glass is the old polyester stuff. But I'll grind all that out and sand it out real good and clean it good and tape it back in and use epoxy resin to bond it all together. Got everything set up in here where I've been doing epoxy work. And just stick that companionway ladder there in the head to get it out of the way. And I gotta crawl up in here and knock out all of my temporary supports. Had the heat on in here all night, so it's kind of warm in here actually. So actually a really very nice, beautiful day this afternoon. So the epoxy should have cured good that I put in yesterday. See if I can find me a hammer here. Like I say, this is a bit like trying to work in a coffin. It's pretty snug. Yeah, so it looked like everything cured properly. No issues. I'm going to mix up some thickened epoxy and go around the perimeter and make sure that any little void is filled in around the edge. The squeeze out from when I installed that yesterday didn't quite fill in the gap everywhere. It filled in a good bit. It filled in most of it, but some areas it squeezed out into the gap but didn't quite fill it up. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of thickened epoxy and go around and just fill in the perimeter real good in that little gap around there. Then after that cures, I'll come back around it with the grinder and grind that joint out and tape it good with some fiberglass tape real good everywhere. 2 or 3 layers, at least a couple of layers. Probably run like a 3-inch layer and a 6-inch layer or something like that. And that's probably going to be good enough. From the outside, it's very sturdy. So, anyway. But you can tell it's a pretty tight spot to work. Not totally enough room, but not an excessive amount. Just mixed up some thickened epoxy, and I mixed it up pretty stiff, maybe a little bit thicker or a little bit drier than like peanut butter, so that hopefully it won't fall on my head. Get in my hair. About half fast hardener and about half slow hardener mixed up with this. It's a beautiful day, but it's still in the, I don't know, probably middle to upper 50s. So I'm using a mixture of fast and slow hardener. Get this stuff to kick before the temperature starts dropping this afternoon. Well, I got a nice strong floor again. No sponginess, no movement. That's good. Still got to tape the seams down underneath the floor there. Haven't done that yet. I'm getting ready to I'm gonna drill these 2 holes out here, get everything drilled out, make sure I've got don't have any voids in those oversized holes. That hole there I'm doing away with. I cut a fiberglass gel coated fiberglass plug and put in there, and then these other ones everything was over drilled, and then I filled in with thickened epoxy around all the perimeters everywhere there and all those holes and everything. They've all been filled in solid with thickened epoxy with a larger diameter than the holes were. So I shouldn't have water penetration getting back in there anymore. You know, plus, you know, obviously, you know, rebedding everything when I put it back in. One thing I haven't done yet, but I'm going to do, that center hole there where the pedestal actually goes, I'm going to cut a ring or a collar out of fiberglass and do a little raised ring on the top side right there to that inside hole. And that'll act as a dam, if you will, to keep any rainwater that or seawater for that matter that ever happens to you know, try to get up underneath that pedestal. It'll hit that ring that I put in there, and it'll divert it and keep it out of that hole completely. And like I said, this one here I'm doing away with, and I'll sand it out and gel coat that and be done with that one completely. I've got the bronze inspection port there where the emergency tiller goes, rebedded and put back in. Got this re-drilled, the big hole anyway, and got all the old bedding compound cleaned off and everything sanded and cleaned up. Got this all cleaned up and the old bedding compound off of it and got it all sanded out, ready to gel coat at some point in time. We've got a little bit of, actually I think this has been painted, so I'll still probably put gel coat on it just to seal it up good, but at some point in time, if I keep the boat long enough, I'll probably tape all this off, sand it out, tape it off, and put new non-skid down in here anyway. It's got the, let's see if you can see it here, the musical note and the PP for Pied Piper. Debossed into the floor. I'll probably try to keep that. But the floor is nice and sturdy now. Nice and sturdy. Still got to do that fiberglass edging, which I'll probably do tomorrow. And hopefully you can see there where I cored the perimeter of these holes. All of these holes have been cored. You can see maybe a shadow through there where I hadn't re-drilled them yet. But all of these holes have been cored with solid thickened epoxy around the perimeters of everything. So there's no plywood exposed anywhere in any of the holes. So here's what I'm doing here. I took a 4.5 inch bit and a 3.5 inch bit and cut me a little ring, a little collar. And I'm gonna just glue that right there, just like that, with some JB weld, and put a little fillet around it. I didn't want to make it too big because I don't want it to interfere with the pedestal. But I've got a little bit of room where I can put a little bit, and that'll act like a dam to keep water from getting down in the hole there. So just enough of a lip there, to deflect water out if it happens to get underneath the pedestal. Got that all sanded down nice and smooth inside and out, so no wires or cables will get snagged on anything. And that won't be seen, that'll be up underneath that steering pedestal. It's gotta help. Well, it got down to 25 degrees Fahrenheit last night, as early this morning. It's 27 degrees right now. Nice sunny day though, and it's supposed to warm up into the middle 50s, or lower 50s at least, this afternoon. So I'm hoping to be able to finish glassing up the seams on this cockpit floor this afternoon. But my epoxy is going to be cold, and inside this boat's going to be cold. So I'm going to turn on the heat, let it warm things up for a few hours before I come back out here to work. The boat is an absolute disaster right now. I'm here trying to work on everything, but this resin is going to be freezing cold. So I'm going to turn the heater on. I'm just using this little bitty cube ceramic heater. It's a Duracraft, and it warms it up in here rather nicely. Okay, so I'll let that run for a few hours, and then after dinner I'll come out here and try to get this other glass work done. So I'm mixing up a little bit of West System epoxy here, and I'm using a fast hardener because it's still a little cool. Had the heat on all morning in here, and I'm going to wet out the area where I'm going to put my cloth. What I've done is cut some 6-inch strips of the 1708 biaxial, and that's what I'm going to use to tape this thing up with. I had some scraps that was big enough to cut these pieces out of, so that's what I'm using. But anyway, I'll put this first layer, wetted out with the fast hardener, and I will let it start tacking over just a little bit, and then I'll apply my tape with the matte side up. That'll help that first wetted out coat. Once it starts to tack up good, it'll help hold this in place overhead so it doesn't fall on me trying to get it up and get it in place. If you catch it just at the right time, it just kind of like acts as an adhesive and just holds it in place. And then I can, squeegee that out with my roller and everything, and hopefully won't have it falling on my head. Trying to get out air bubbles and excess resin to the edges.
There are good times and bad times, happy times and sad times. Good songs with bad rhymes, and we still sing them with cheer. And old friends make you feel good, on them you can depend, for warm hugs and cold glasses of beer. There are grandmas and grandpas and mamas and papas, some still around, though many have moved on. Old family remembered, and all flames turned to embers. Remember them all in this song, and we sing la 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 la, and we sing la